two unique events today. A very special curated talk by Dr. Stephen Jones, and at 2:40, so very shortly after his talk, a performance by Dr. Iran Sanadzadeh in the adjacent gallery. Dancing the Music pays tribute to the life and work of Philippa Cullen. Born in 1950, Cullen was a dancer and choreographer, and some might question why McClelland, Australia's preeminent sculpture park, would host an exhibition centred on the life of a dancer. But in fact, it makes a lot of sense. During her short life, Cullen dedicated herself to exploring radical ideas about space, time, movement and sound. She was an immensely passionate and restless and curious artist. Cullen made a great contribution to the experimental arts, and McClelland is honoured to shine a light on this pioneer of experimental spatial practice. Dancing the Music would not have been possible without the passion of another unsung hero of the Australian arts, who has archived Cullen's life's work and dedicated himself to the preservation of early electronic art, along with his own pioneering work with push video, the famous Namjoon Cake and the Severed Heads. Please welcome Stephen Jones.
Okay, I'm basically going to walk around slowly so you can just kind of do, focus on whatever you need to. I think it's not unreasonable to say that Philippa was probably Australia's first electronic performance artist. And she really, as I talk, you'll get a bit of an understanding of how that developed. So, just to begin with, she went to, actually she started dancing with the Bowden Visa Dance Studio in Sydney, which is the main contemporary or modern, in those days, dance studio in Sydney. And it was, they've got, a number of very important dancers in Australia came through there, including Jackie Carroll, I think Helen Herbertson may have been there, and others who I don't know of particularly. Though I actually went there and did dance myself there for a bit of the time. And then, but she then went to, so that was about when she was about 16, 17, 18, and then she went to Sydney University and studied fine arts, medieval history and Italian, which is and it's the medieval history stuff and some of the events that happened during her studies of fine arts that really make a difference, but who really set her off. So these early pictures, well, this one really is just some of her theatrical choreography. She worked with the local theatre company, one of the local amateur theatre companies, and did that sort of stuff. But at Sydney University, she ran into some people called optronic kinetics. There were three electrical engineers, David Smith, Kaz Konziolka, and Phil Connor, and I think that's the right group. And while she was doing fine arts, she was studying with Donald Brooke, who is a very now deceased but very, very important curator and archivist and writing about fine art in those days, and especially the change, the shift from expressionism and stuff like that into actual things like performance and electronic stuff and video art and things like that. And there was the boys from optronic kinetics were interested in theremins, and they built a theremin. There was a place in the University of Sydney called the Tin Sheds, which is a sort of, basically it was just an old bunch of warehouse buildings or something like that that were opposite the university, and they were running, they workshops in there where they ran, you know, various courses in different kinds of contemporary art and stuff like that. And the electronics kinetics guys, they got together a theremin and built a wire antenna all around one of the studios, so that as you walked around, it would squeal at you as you came too close and do things like that, you know. And so she realised that this was the way she was going to do what she really wanted to do, which was to make the music dependent on the dance, because the dance is normally dependent on the music. You know, it's just like some kind of fixed relationship which people haven't really broken. But she wanted to break that relationship and turn it upside down, and she did very well at doing that. The Optronics Kinetics guys built a theremin for her, and she did the first piece that she did was called Electronic Aspects, which is mapped out here. There are no known photographs of the performance, but she made lots of these are filmed as notes. You know, obviously they've been scanned and printed, but they're from her notebooks, which I think may be down in the vitrine. And she, so what she did was that she got a big antenna, a theremin antenna, big enough to run across the whole stage, so it would have been from that wall to this wall kind of thing at least. And the dancers worked against that and made the sounds as they moved around. So she choreographed the movement, and then the sound, the music, came from the theremin, which of course under those conditions was just a squeal, like you can hear from that one down there and the end there. But that squeal is a shifting in frequency caused by the capacitance of, or the body energy, which is translated to the antenna, and then from the antenna it drives that antenna is actually driving one of a pair of oscillators which are matched, except when the change in the antenna capacitance. Sorry, I'm being very technical here at the moment, but anyway, so that all you know, that allows that's how the sound comes out, and then so she did Electronic Aspects, and then she did another piece which there is a piece of video for, but there's no actual photographs again, because this is really, you know, student level university stuff, and nobody thought to take photographs of these things because of the future. You know, they just wanted to know, to see the event happening now. And so that was called Utter, that piece. And what that piece was no theremins. That was the sound that people made, the dancers made, or sounds that the dancers made as they moved around. And in the video, which unfortunately we can't really listen to the sound unless you use one of the headphones, but it's not that video, that's quadrangle workshop stuff, I'll come to that. And she, with Utter, they're moving around, there's a central spotlight on the stage, and the dancers are moving around that and stuff, and squealing and uttering and making funny noises and whatever, they're laughing and crying and whatever they felt like making in the way of noise, and that helped. That was the acoustic effect or result of her, of allowing the dancer to control the sound, and so that was her intention the whole way along the process, and so these. She also worked with there's a very important new music group in 1968, 69, 70, maybe a couple of years after that. I think actually it goes up to about 74. And they were called AZ Music. And AZ Music was basically 4 or 5 musicians led by a man called David Ahern, and Philippa got to know them, and she did some dance performance with some of their improvisation. And if you read these articles here, these notes here, the reviews, they talk about how she actually she was almost the conductor for the musical performance, you know, because her movements gave them the inspiration, or the, you know, what to sound to make next, how quick to do it, when to do it, and all of those sorts of things, you know. So she really pushed the boundaries of dance all the time. So these are worth having a bit of a read of at some stage if you get the chance. And then the videos are a number of videos, and I've lost track of which ones are on what screen. There is some video which I think, no, that's how much will come to that. Anyway, these videos that's here, and on that wall over there is another set of videos, were from different events and different performances and things like that she gave. And then, so she got together with Optronic Kinetics, and then from there she met a composer, Greg Sheamer, and an engineer called Phil Connor, and they set about trying to get the theremin to drive an audio synthesizer, so that you want to use the frequency that's coming out of the theremin is really just a squeal of sine waves, but you need to change the frequency into a voltage so that as the frequency of the sine wave goes up, the voltage changes up, for example, or as it slows down, it goes down. That can then be used to control an audio synthesizer. And so the audio synthesizer then makes the sounds and stuff. So what happens next is this thing called Homage to Theremin 2, and that's the actual original poster printed by the Fine Arts Workshop, the Kinshas group, who were the main poster makers around Sydney. They were the radical poster makers in 1970 or 72, 73, whatever it was, and they really did, and this is one of their pieces. I've forgotten to tell you a story about the Donald Brook. When she was studying with Donald Brook, in fact, Greg Sheamer would know about this as well. Brook had put a theremin under the desk, with the lecturer's desk, and he would move around and just squeal as he moved around, you know. So that's kind of but that's one of the ways in which the theremin was introduced to her, apart from working with the Optronic Kinetics guys and doing electronic aspects. But I think the experience with Donald Brook in the lecture theatre was one of the real triggers that formed it. It made it happen for her, made it come together for her. You know. So Greg Sheamer and Phil Connor then got together with Philippa, and they built 2 devices, which one of which was a frequency to voltage converter. I probably just said this to you, but I'm repeating myself. That would allow the actual frequency of the theremin to control the synthesizer. And so this performance, Homage to Theremin 2, which is this whole set of pictures here, come forward and have a bit of a look at them, talking about them. Basically, most of these photographs, not all of them, but most of them are shot by Owen Gordon in Crystal at a rehearsal for the performance. So you don't actually have any video or the main video of the final performance, but we do have all these pictures as a still, and so you can see what was going on. and where's the anyway, somewhere there should be a picture of the array of antennas that she had made available to her, and they you can see them in here, so that there were these pedestal antennas, which were basically just a flat plate. I'm being here. Ridiculous.
Oh.
So we got the pedestals are what Theremin actually originally, the man who invented it, the Russian spy who invented the damn things, he used plates as the antennas. And so there's a performance from about 1928 where they used flat plates to do the performance, and that's really, I mean, again, I don't think there's any film or video of it, but you know, there was a really important. In many ways where the whole game with the theremin started. And then so we've got the plates, the pedestals, and then here there's actually this is probably the best sort of shots of them. These are these long wire antennas, which are basically just a piece of thin metal tube which has been bent into these appropriate, into these curls and curves and things. And the dancers had to learn how to use those so that they could walk up to it and it would and then walk away from it, it would slow down and stuff like that. And then, and these people here, these two, this is Phil Connor, and this is McClelland Gallery, who built the actual antennae for Philippa. And you can see in the background of this picture, these two. VCS3, which is the synthesizer of the time. That was the synthesizer of choice. It's what you wanted if you were going to play with electronic music. And then, just test equipment and stuff like that. And this is the, where they were all, where the musicians, the electronics was set up, and they went and worked from there. So you can see all of this performance. Some of this is on one of the videos. So again, there's stuff you can look at which is much more extended than just looking at still pictures. And then there was a repeat of the performance at the conservatorium. There again, there's no known video, but there are at least some still photographs, and they'll do. Of course, we don't have video until just recently, and now we've got it on the phone. So anyway, so in this vitrine, a number of her actual documents. Philippa, after the Commonwealth Fair, she went overseas. She went to France and Holland, and she studied with at the Institute of Sonology in Holland, and they, Institute of Sonology, basically they're working with sound and how do you make sounds and what kind of instruments can you do and things like that. And she talked them into getting building some devices that she could make sounds from using the VCS3. And this is the first time she used the pressure-sensitive floors, which will come through. And then, so this material here is kind of, the raw evidential material from Philippa herself. I was, at the time, in 1975, I was living with a collective of people called Bush Video, and Philippa was also living there, and then when she went away, she left a lot of stuff there, and she went to Adelaide and then went to India, and unfortunately didn't come back. And so all of this stuff is actually from Philippa's original materials that she left at Bushmead at the collective when we were all there. So I just sort of thought, well, you've got to maintain this stuff, you've got to preserve it, you know, and so I'm doing all I can to do so. And, you know, I mean, she's such an important person in the dance scene and in, you know, her role in electronics is, you know, a real driver. She was the one who drove the whole process, you know. So then over in this corner, well, here we go. Does it work? That's the sort of thing that you will have seen people playing experiments probably, or if you haven't, look it up. You know, Google it.
Oh no, that's the theremin.
No, I think I've
That's all right. I can turn it off for the thing while we continue.
No, that's all right. And so, again, you know, basically a lot of this end of things is really just documentation of the actual instruments and things like that. So she, and this is the picture I was looking at before. This is the theremin. These are the theremins that Manuel de Blazer built, theremin antennae that Manuel de Blazer built for Philippa for use with the audio synthesizers. And this particular circuit diagram here by Greg Sheehan is a block diagram of the actual the instruments that translated the theremin sound into the stuff that sound audio or voltages that the VCS3 could deal with. And then this is just an ad from the people who built VCS3s, but I thought it was kind of interesting. It's a pretty old piece of paper now. And then she, after Homage to Theremin 2, she went to Melbourne, came to Melbourne, and did a thing at the Ewing Gallery. It's probably not called the Ewing Gallery anymore. What's it called? Is it still there, the Ewing Gallery?
George Payton.
Sorry?
It's the George Payton Gallery now.
Oh, is it?
The
George Payton, yes.
At Union, up in top of the Union building.
Yeah, that's the one. And she did some performances. They had a week or a few days of a thing called event structures, which was in lots of you know, like a dozen of the artists around the time. You can see the group of people there. Some of them I know the names of, some of them I don't. And the VCS3 and Philippa is actually working between these two posts here, which are the antennas for that theremin, for the theremin, and then which is then driving the VCS, the Cynthia in that case. And so that's Philippa. She worked with people like Peter Kennedy on a performance where she wasn't actually performing, it was really Peter Kennedy's performance, but she was involved. And that's the piece is called Butterfield Blackman, and that's a very important piece from Peter Kennedy, who's an artist who lives in all of these days. And this is Chris Mann, who sadly is no longer with us. And he was in the with the whole process and stuff. Then she went to Curator, and did first finale. Was it no? Second.
No, it was about the fifth.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. This is Tom McCulloch, who actually was directed the Vietnam, the Three in Armies. So I've got all my reference people here. And anyway, and this is the where the building of the new, what I'm going to talk about in a minute, pressure sensitive floors took place. So that's really just photographed. And then all of the video, I think, can be to basically just give time to at a later time when it's not still. So, and part of a larger thing that happened in Canberra called Australia 75. And John Hanson was there, and I think Greg was there, and I'm not quite sure if I recognise anybody else who was there, but so by this stage she had the precious machine floors, and so she was using those, and they were basically 4 large triangular pieces of timber with a more kind of border around them which held them off the ground, and inside, underneath the centre point is a little pressure sensor, basically. And so she could, by moving around and stepping from one to the other and things like that, she could actually play sounds from those. And there's a really interesting and important story about getting those to work, but I'm not going to go into that because that is technically complex. But anyway, so she did all of this. You can see the floors here. At the same time, there are several other very important artists, including Stan Ostoyevsky, who you may know the name of, but you may not. And then John Hanson was there with his video synthesizer. Bush Video were there, and they were playing all kinds of strange things on the screens. These were the first colour screens we'd seen in Australia. We're talking 1975. They weren't around, you know. So you can see everybody. This is Helen Herbertson, Brian Cochran. I don't know who that is unless that is Philippa and not him. But anyway, there's Philip, and there's on the videos again. There is more video from Australia 75. I was fortunate enough to be able to go down there and videotape a couple of days stuff, you know, working around there, which was fantastic. And then these, so we can just see the floors and how they were worked. And this is a man called Wayne Nickel, who was with the Australian Dance. No, I'm not quite sure who he was. I think it was the Australian Dance Theatre, but it may not have been. Anyway, Philippa, and then various people to see on the floors. And I don't have a photograph. Oh, well, we do here. This is Wayne. This is Helen Herbertson, who was very close friend or good friend of Philippa's, and had, I think, what it is or was teaching at Melbourne University music department or dance department or something, but she hasn't been able to contact her. I can't see her here. Anyway, all of this stuff was happening in the ballroom of the Lakeside Hotel in Canberra, which is quite a large space, and lots of stuff going on in it. And, you know, it was just intense day after day after day. Gough Whitlam, our hero, opened the show, the Australia 75 in here, and gave a fantastic talk about how important the arts were to the people and to the country and to, you know, the government and so on. And then, of course, the coup happened. But anyway, so that was really a big and very important thing. And then, so that's all of Philippa's. And you can, if you look at some of these, you can actually see what happened was that the floors were used to drive a computer called a PDP-11. And for anybody that knows early computing in Australia, and that machine would read the floors, turn them into the sort of shifting lines that worked around a screen area, and those were sent to the video synthesizer that John Hanson had there, and then off to the screens. And you can see in here, these are the colorized lines of movement of people working on the floors, whoever was working at the time. So this is all live video basically going on here originally. again, some of that you can see in the videotapes, but it's not so trivial. And then she went to Holland at one stage. I think I mentioned she worked at the Institute of Sinology, and she did some lots more work there, and then came back, and this is late 74, early 74, and moved in with Bush Video, and she started working with them, and these final pictures are actually Philippa's was working with a guy who had been building biofeedback devices, which basically, they're the sensors that the medical people really use these days to see whether your brain's still running or your heart's still running or you've still got a pulse and all of that sort of stuff, so you can see the waveforms and things. And, I think she got a bit sort of overwhelmed by the whole thing and decided that she needed to stop what she was doing and go and live in Langwarrin in India. And so she went to India and never came back, which was, pretty devastating for everybody. And so that was a life. And, I'm really pleased to be able to keep this woman in memory, in everybody's minds. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure Stephen will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have about this talk following the performance in the next gallery, which will commence in about 5 minutes. So we'll make our way in there.